Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. The next issue to be discussed in the treatise of Nasiruddin is that of hope or raja. Raja means to have this good hope that we will receive salvation or our journeys to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will culminate in the meeting with God and the emergence of the divine light. If it was not for hope, the motivation would not remain to do good. And that is why we need to always have hope. I want to discuss it somewhat differently. Hope is actually the presence of God at the most intimate level of our existence. What drives us against all odds is this light of hope. What allows us to live from today into tomorrow, in spite of the challenges of today, is the hope that tomorrow will be a better day, that we can change the situation. Now, going into this subject, you remember that particular incident of Imam Ali, where somebody approached Imam Ali and he said, "Explain to me the existence of God in a way that I understand." The Imam said, "In that case, let's construct a scenario that you find is an impossible scenario where nobody can help you." He said, "Yes, I can think of such a thing. I can think of myself being at sea and my ship wrecks at that point, and I'm holding on to the wreckage or a plank of the wreckage." And Imam Ali said, "Then further on, just imagine the situation." So he said, "Yes, well, I can imagine that the waves are momentous and a wave is about to overtake me. It's imminent." So Imam Ali said, "At that point, now just pause. In view of your situation and the hopelessness of the whole situation that you've described, would there still be a flicker of hope deep inside there that will say to you that I can still be saved?" Upon introspection, the man said, "Yes, I would still not lose hope." The Imam said, "That hope, that light of hope in there is God." So, hope is that very deeply embedded sense and presence of God within all of us. So, hope is a motivator and it's a driver. As opposed to hope, there is despair. Despair takes away the motivation from reaching God. But despair is also seen as fear. In wayfaring, they work in a variety of ways. That they are both, these both extremes are kept in place to keep us on the middle and allow us to evolve. The Quran says that there are no tribulations that come upon the earth or inflict you within your souls, but that they have already been prescribed before the earth has been created. The whole purpose of it is, the Quran says to us, so that you may not become overjoyed when you receive something, and you may not be overly grieved and disappointed when you lose something. What the Quran is saying here is that, look, these are fluctuating states in which you will get caught up. But the whole idea is for you to maintain that middle path, to maintain that balance. You will be constantly fluctuating. The reason for this is that that is the only mechanism for your growth towards God. If you become despairing of the mercy of God, then you fall within the ranks of the devil, who has become totally hopeless of God and as a result has sworn his enmity with God and sworn to be the enemy of God. On the other hand, if you become so complacent, you will fail the whole opportunity of evolving towards God. So you have to maintain yourself between hope and between despair, or hope and fear. Now, if we look at this very carefully, this is the very nature by which we govern our lives. First and foremost, there is hell and heaven. Heaven or paradise signifies this hope and desire. Hell signifies despair and fear. Heaven and hell are kept there to keep us in the balance. But then look at it in the way we are within our worldly lives. We have incentives that we give and we have threats. We have rewards and we have punishments. It is the same nature with which we act with in terms of our interactions with our children. We incentivize them and we threaten them. The whole point there is to keep the child growing constantly because we know excess of any one of the two will result in damnation and failure. So hope and despair work at this level. At a very intimate level, however, we find God wanting to reveal himself through the states of extremity of hope and extremity of despair. So, for example, when somebody begins to despair to a level that they see no outlet, Allah in there ignites this light of hope. But I am there, Allah says. I am there. Take hold of me and brings them out of despair. On the other hand, we come to the peak of hope. And at the peak of hope, suddenly we don't find what we're looking for. And despair takes birth. This is the way in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keeps us moving along the path. The other thing that the ulama and Tusi talks about in terms of hope with God is that we need to have a good opinion of God. At a point, we are supposed to acknowledge that, oh Allah, I am not worthy, and I know this, but I have confidence in your mercy. In a hadith, Allah says, I will be true to the good opinion of my creatures about me. So Ali Salamullah alayhi says in Dua Kumail, Hayhat ma dhalika dhannu bik. He says, Oh Lord, how will you punish me, burn me, and chastise me? Then he looks inward and exclaims, Hayhat, no God, this is not an opinion I can have of you. You are loftier than that. Similarly, Imam Zainul Abidin states, O Lord, give me the fullness of faith that doubt is removed from my soul and allow me to have good opinion of you. Now, when we look into this very carefully, we will see that as human beings, we are very negative people and we're very pessimistic and we don't really have the confidence in God. Now, this confidence in God that the Imams are talking about is not the confidence of God that is fanciful, that we induce within our minds through fanciful thinking, which is a prelude to the real hope. The real hope is what is felt inside there. That when a person recognizes Allah, immediately at times the heart opens up and says, Oh Allah, you will never do this. And I know this. Forgive me nonetheless. But I know that you will never ever do this. You are far too great. So that's the sort of confidence we have in our parents. That no matter how bad we are or we have been, deep in there, there is deep seated confidence that my parent will not do this to me no matter how bad I am. That confidence need to be had. We need to have that confidence in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in wayfaring, that is known as raja and hope. That I have got nothing to my claim, but I have full confidence in my God. Now, Hussein ibn Ali displays these two extremes so wonderfully in his dua. He says, Oh Allah, how may I stand hopeless when you are my king? O Allah, how may I stand in a state of arrogance when you overpower me? Keep me in that state of utmost balance. Nasiruddin quotes a hadith and he says, it's a hadith or a statement of the Urafa. He says, if you were to measure the level of fear or despair and hope of a believer, you will find that they are totally equal. None of them outweighs the other. If fear outweighs hope, a person goes towards despair that cannot be rectified. If hope predominates fear, then a person goes towards complacency and misses out on the opportunity. So, in wayfaring, what is required is to maintain that beautiful balance. For the initial stages, the wayfarer needs to remind themselves of constant hell and heaven scenarios. At a very progressed level, the wayfarer remind themselves of acceptance of God or rejection of God. At a very advanced level, we come to an end of hope and despair by saying, "Oh Allah, I hand myself over to you as and how you want to deal with me." There's a hadith that on the day of Qiyamah, God will say to his creatures that your claim is that you have loved me and you have trusted me, even though you might not have been good people. I'm going to put you to test. I want you to step into hell for my sake. And that will be the greatest test that a soul experiences on the day of Qiyamah. That if you indeed say you trust me and you love me and you know that my discretion is better than yours, then I decide that you prove this to me by falling into hell, because I want you to go to hell. Now it is said that at that point will be the greatest test for such a soul. That do I go and fall into hell or do I make excuses and stay back? Because there's no doubt God will forgive. But can I demonstrate my love by going into hell for the sake of God? Now, there comes a position within a soul where the soul says to Allah, "Oh Allah, I can't bear hell. But if that is what you want, and if that's the only thing that will prove to you of my devotion to you, then I will enter therein." It's a very difficult task, but Imam Ali um, obviously demonstrates this, and he says, "In hell, if you were to put me therein, I will cry out to you and I will complain to you about the distance that I am feeling from you." Whereas we hear of the people of hell that Allah says He will not look at them, He will not talk with them, and He will not listen to them. But here is Imam Ali saying, "No, my heart is filled with your love, and even in hell, I am besieging you." In any case, hope of achieving God, fear of missing out on God come to an end within a ripened soul. A ripened soul that says to Allah, everything as it ought to be. I leave myself to you. Claiming your heaven, fleeing from your hell, do not mean much to me at this stage. Finding you, not finding you does not mean much to me if it means I am imposing upon you. O Allah, allow me to acknowledge that whatever there is as it ought to be, because you have decided it in that way. So I'll stop there. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.